Hello everyone. Right, a couple of games to share from this morning. One is against a player rated around 1050. The other one's rated in the 1200s. So going to be looking out for this. The point of this video is not for me to get, look at me, I'm better than these guys, right? The point is to highlight the typical shortcomings and errors and opportunities for growth over the 1000 mark, typically. Okay, so first one, I think the theme of this game really, to me, is looking for the protection of your pieces and making sure your pieces are defended. And when you've got good development, you've got your pieces out on the board, and everything is kind of protected by each other. That's what I think that chess teachers and commentators mean by coordination. Right? When your pieces are coordinated, they're working together, they're defending each other. You're not, because every loose piece that you have out on the board is potentially a target. And your point in chess is that you want to increase the number of advantages that you've got in the game, particularly in the opening and middle game, as you're positioning your forces. You want to increase the number of potential threats against your opponent. But at the same time, you want to minimize threats against yourself. So leaving undefended pieces is one of those ways, one of those just little chinks in the armor that your opponent can then exploit, and that can lead to a collapse in the game. So let's go through game number one. So I'm playing a player from Israel rated around 1050, and we have the French, and he does this La Bourdonnais variation with f4, very aggressive. So clearly, I mean, it's kind of leaving the king open, possibly. I think one possibility here actually would have been simply Queen h4 check, but then that would have just been met with g3, also defending the pawn, so that would have come with tempo. So here, white captures on d5, I recapture with my e-pawn. So we've got a kind of weird Sicilian variation here. If the kings and queens were swapped round, yeah, it looks like a Sicilian, doesn't it? So knight comes out to f3. Now I develop and pin the knight. Breaks the pin, and I develop knight to f6. White castle. So now he's got his rook on this file behind this advanced f pawn. I bring out my bishop here with check. Now I think the engine said that bishop d6 was better, literally just lining up against this pawn, which is just saying to my opponent, come on then, go on. You've left, you've got an undefended pawn there, what are you going to do? Go on, what are you going to do, right? So now d4, and I just drop my bishop back. So it's still in line with the king, okay? So that's adding a threat. Also, obviously, pinning the knight was adding a threat, and it forced my opponent to have to do something about it and block the pin with the bishop. Okay, so we have knight c3, white castles, and this is a weird one. This actually took me a minute, so 35 seconds on this move before I actually realised he's just hung his pawn. Right, he's moved it from a square where it was defended by that bishop, and he's moved it forward to this square where it's not defended by anything at all. So I didn't really see the point of that, and I looked at it and thought, I can just take that, right? No need for that move whatsoever, particularly when you haven't finished development, right? So why not bring the bishop out, get the queen off the back rank? Here it's kind of equal. Both sides have castle, both sides have got 3 minor pieces out on the board. There's just no call for that move. Anyway, so now we have knight to h4. And you need to pay attention to this because, okay, yes, it's a discovered attack against the bishop. However, it's moved the knight from a square where it was previously defended by 3 pieces, and in fact the queen, so technically 4 pieces, to a square where it's not defended at all. And why? For the sake of a double attack on this bishop. Okay, so bishop just drops back to e6. It just slots in as a tall pawn, in making a new pawn chain there. We have bishop now pins my knight, and I develop my other knight to d7 because I haven't developed this knight yet, So I've got the option of bringing it to d7, where it's now buddying up with this guy, allowing my queen some freedom. Now we have bishop f3. So he's looking at this pawn here. So now we've got 2 attackers on this pawn, yeah? And 2 defenders. However, defender number 2 is pinned. So we could have knight takes, bishop takes for free. Okay? Because knight can't capture because bishop takes queen, right? So, simply c6. So, you know, it was an attack. It was kind of adding a threat, but it was a threat that was very easy for me to get out of. And also, it allowed me to get out of the threat with an improvement. So now I have a nice solid pawn chain, coordinated pawn chain, on the queen side there, right? And now h3. Not 100% of the point of that. I mean, it's not like I was about to drop my bishop into there. It would have just been captured, supported by the queen. So yeah, another kind of slightly dubious move there. Now I drop my bishop back to c7. So I've got a plan now, right? We're in the middle game. I've got a plan, and my plan is going to be something like get rid of this knight, or somehow get my queen to d6 and try and drop in there, because this knight is still stuck out on the rim. Where it's doing no good whatsoever. You know, that really was a pointless attack by white that has not improved white's position in the game. And now he's got this awkward knight here, right? We've also got this bishop that's undefended. We've got this pawn here that's undefended since the bishop moved out. So you can see that white's position is kind of loose and messy. You know, he has loose ends, okay? Whereas I'm trying to keep all of my my pieces working together a bit more. All right, so now we have another move of a developed piece. This knight is now maneuvering itself around the board. Slightly odd. And now I attack the bishop. And you see, one thing that I noticed, that since the bishop came to this square, right, look at this knight. Look at Mr. Awkward there on the edge, yeah? He can't go there or there because his own pieces are on those squares. Okay, can't go there because bishop just grabs him. Can't go there because pawn just grabs him. So the knight could actually be trapped. So what I figure is h6, should the bishop simply retreat, I've got g5, it wins a piece, right? And I've got enough material, you know, around my king that I'm not too scared of an assault by the white queen. Okay, so now white, I think, figures this out and decides to do a desperado move. So what that is when you say, look, I acknowledge that I'm about to lose material. There's nothing I can do about that. It's a statement of fact. But what is the most damage that I can inflict on my way out? So bishop takes h6, pawn takes h6, queen now comes to d2, looking down at the loose pawn, king h7. All right. And I figure that I'm reasonably good here. Still noticing that this knight is undefended. Also, this pawn is undefended, right? So, white now comes in with a knight. Now, I could simply have... So, I'm a piece up at this point, right? We've lost 2 pawns each, but I've won a bishop. I could simply have traded off here, but I decided to go in with e4. So, this hits the queen. The queen has no route through towards my king right now. And it improves my knight. It puts it on an outpost because there's no pawn here or here that can dislodge my knight. So that's a really nice square for my knight. Also, its buddy can come in behind it and kind of leapfrog and pair up again. So bishop takes, pawn takes. Rook comes across now to e4. And I'm quite happy for that bishop to capture there. Okay. So we have rook attacking this pawn. Pawn is currently undefended. So what would you play in this position? Okay, we want to just shore things up. We want to ensure the king is protected. This knight is actually undefended as well. So queen takes h4. Grab another piece. Why not? Allow the rook to grab the knight. And now queen back to g5. This is also a pin. It's a strong pin because white's queen is undefended, right? So when you're thinking about all the time in your play, you need to be thinking about, okay, if I put my piece there, is it a defended square? Is my piece protected when it's on that square? Or am I leaving it as hanging out as a potential target at some point in the future? Now this queen here is a potential target. It means that this knight is absolutely pinned. I also have a bishop looking at that knight, as well as my queen. Right, so it's all about to go horribly wrong for white. Okay, so knight's defended twice, attacked twice. So no dice there, but look at where the queen's just moved. Okay, yes, it's a defended square. It's defended by the pawn, it's defended by this knight, but walks straight into a pin. Okay, bishop f5. Now the rook can't move with check, which is important, because if the rook could move with check, say, we might be able to do something about that, but there's no checks, so the rook is going to fall. So we have rook f3, I take the rook, queen takes the bishop, and now f5 attacks the queen. Queen moves out of the way, and now I just simply drop my queen back. King moves out of the line of this because, you know, this pawn is the defender of these two, and just wants to get out of the way of that. That's absolutely fine. Now I engage my final piece. Rook e8, queen moves back, now looking at a loose pawn. Now, this is the point that I notice that I have a very strong attacking idea. Okay, so I ignore the pawn, I move my rook to g8. Okay, now queen takes g2 would be checkmate. Of course, g2 is guarded by that knight, but I have a bishop looking at that knight. Okay, so if the queen gets greedy, queen takes b7, which is what happened in the game. Okay, simple sequence. Bishop takes f4, comes with check. If the rook captures, it's checkmate. Right? If the king moves to there, it's checkmate. I've just removed the defender of that key square. I mean, could have rook there, makes no difference. Queen takes, g2, checkmate. Okay, so there you go. So let's have a quick look at the second game that I played today. Now, this opponent is rated just under 1300 and definitely plays better, I would say. So if e4, e5, the Vienna game, symmetrical, and now I go for the Halloween line, and bishop comes out, so I capture the knight. Yeah, so here, if the bishop hadn't come out, I think if pawn takes, that's when we go for the Halloween line, maybe. So anyway, bishop comes out, I take the pawn, because I'm taking with a wing pawn. Okay, so now I've got two central pawns. Black's knight attacks my bishop, just retreat the bishop. And now there's a serious threat here against f2. We've got knight and bishop looking at this. So I notice that d4, which is the best move, hits the bishop, blocks the attack. Queen's also attacking this knight, okay? But the knight's defended by its buddy. Bishop retreats. I bring out my bishop, again with a pin. So this is not a winning move, but I'm just layering on these burdens, right? So now that knight can't move. So now, for example, you know, if queen takes knight and knight takes, I take their queen, king takes, you know, there's options here. Now we have d6 with a discovered defense by the light squared bishop. Okay, it's a decent move. Black is realizing I need to add more defense. Okay, now knight to f3, just good developing move. Queen e7. Looking at this is defended once, which is enough. But I now push my queen up to d3. I've got ideas of, very often in the Vienna you'll castle here and put your rook on the semi-open file, but then, you know, this bishop's looking down. It'd be looking down straight down my king's throat. I don't really want that. So now we have c6, and now I decide to kick the knight away. I know it can't come here or here, can't come there. It's going to have to retreat all the way to h6. And now this is good. I'm happy about this now. This knight is now useless. It's out of the game. Right? The only square it's got is g8. Okay, so now I castle queenside. I'm quite happy with my central control here. Queen moves across, and now I grab the knight, and pawn takes. So, yeah, I did think about this for a few moves. Should I just grab the knight, break black's pawn structure on the king side, and make it hard for black to castle that way? And in the end, I decided it was probably worth it. I felt like I was up. I've completed development. Black has not. King's still in the middle. Let's do this. Okay, now, again, you can see the preparatory move. The rook moves across, preparing for a pawn break in the center. Queen moves again, which is slightly unusual. Okay, and now e5. Now, what would you play as black in this situation? Okay, because black made completely the wrong move, losing the game. Okay, the correct move is actually d takes. D takes e5 is okay. However, black retreated the knight. Can you see the winning tactic here, basically? Okay, pawn takes d6. Okay, so we're attacking the queen, and it's also coming with check. So there's no way to save the queen. The queen's going to be lost, and black here resigns again. So you can kind of feel the difference between like the mid 1000 to 1100 player and the 1200 to 1300 player in this. Bit better coordination, just taking a bit more time to try and keep those pieces working together to a degree. But this move in 12 seconds was definitely simply rushed, you know. And that's really the difference. It comes down to, okay, well, what if I allow the pawn to take, right? What if I capture there? What if that pawn captures on d6? Oh no, that comes with check, and also my queen's under attack. We can't have that, okay? Take there, okay? So it's simply a question of just thinking what if, just one layer deeper each time. Okay, so there you go. There's some tips for players in the 1000 plus range. Hope it's been useful. Please subscribe, share, comment, let me know what you think, all that good stuff. Thanks for watching. I'll see you soon.